First is our art segment with Philip Morris, your host. Philip will be interviewing Michael Janairo, the Arts and Entertainment Director of the Times-Union. They'll be talking about promoting the arts through print and digital media. Let's watch.
Welcome to the art segment of Impact. I'm Philip Morris, CEO of Proctors, and our guest today is Michael Janairo, who is the Arts and Entertainment Editor at the Times-Union in Albany in the Capital Region. Michael, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you have a hell of a job. You have an interesting place in the community in difficult times for your industry. What's it like?
It is. What's it like? It's difficult and it's interesting. So the what's it like? Wow, that's a big question. So every day, my job really is just to make decisions, nonstop making decisions, and to give a sense of how the industry has changed over the years. At the Times-Union, we used to have reporters who were subject specific, who would either, like, one person would cover movies or TV or pop music, and over the years we've staff has left, and so all of that memory, institutional memory, or just subject memory or subject knowledge kind of disappeared, and all the decision making sort of coalesced into my one little brain. And so what I have to do is I've been doing this job for about 4 years now, was to become quickly more knowledgeable than I was about different subjects, in order to make decisions about what we do cover and how we cover it, given our limited resources. But one of the big decisions that had been made, sort of an overall strategic decision, was to become more focused on local things. And the way I view the world of arts and entertainment is in three different zones, as it were. And I'll go from the ones that we try to spend more time on versus the things we spend less time on. And to fulfill our local mission, we focus on things that are created by people who live in the area, that people in the area can experience. So there's in my 4 years, I've done more with local visual arts, doing a little bit more, and we've had, I think, a good long history of covering local theater, and we're either maintaining that or doing a little bit more than before, because there is more local theater than there was even 4 years ago. Our second stage of thinking about things, and this is where I think Proctors comes in, are things that are created outside the region but come into the region, and that's a lot of the Broadway shows at Proctors, or a lot of the national musical acts that are touring. And then the third thing are people who are from the area who have gone away and are doing interesting things, but you may or may not be able to experience it, in the area. So there could be people who grew up in the area, who are, written books, or they're involved in Hollywood films.
You guys still manage amazingly to review, look at, talk about, cover unbelievable amounts of stuff in, again, this tough environment. Some of the tricks of the trade. How do you get some of that to happen?
The coverage of it?
Yeah, how do you get as much as you do?
Well, I think I'm lucky to have an editor who is not only a patron of the arts, but also involved in the arts. So I'm talking about Rex Smith, who performs with Albany Pro Musica, and it's an ongoing conversation that we have about, when we have our coverage, what's of most value to our readers? Is it a article that advances an event, or is it a review? And the thing about reviews is that they are news events that happen locally, and they have an impact on the area. We were constantly negotiating the difference between reviewing a show that might only be here for a day and disappear. Does that have as much weight as something that might be here for you know, a week-long run or 2 weeks or 3 weekends or something. That it's something that we can review it and people can read the review and make a decision, yeah, based on what they're reading, or you know, and it's almost a case-by-case basis. Almost everything that comes in, we have to weigh it. Like, do we cover this? Do we not cover this? But I do have the support, you know, from the top that we will cover as much as we can, given our limited
I think
budget.
you do a great job at it too. So one of the tricks that you didn't mention though is the arts blog, which I think is a trick toward getting that coverage because people participate.
Yeah.
Are you happy with it?
Yeah, I always think we can do more. So here's so among the decisions that I make are there's a lot that we do in social media and that I'm involved in. For the arts is using our Facebook page. There's about 3 Twitter accounts that I run, and then there's also the Arts Talk blog, which is a great way of what could be just quick hits, little things that happen, or just reminders of people that things are coming up. Yeah, we can't send a reporter to cover everything, but we can definitely use the Arts Talk blog. But in addition to the Arts Talk blog, I also started in 2009 something called the Youth Arts blog, which really gets to the core of this problem. There was this, you know, what I saw was our high school sports coverage is phenomenal. It's great. We have a dedicated staff member covering high school sports. We don't have anyone dedicated to covering high school arts or youth arts. There'll be a story every now and then in the paper, but no concentrated effort on it. And so I launched a blog and a Facebook page dedicated to youth arts, where I asked the public to send in information about shows that are happening. It's interesting, a lot of high schools, when they have a musical, they'll assign either a cast member or somebody involved in the production to be the PR person. And they'll contact me, they'll send photos, they'll send a little blurb about the musical that they're doing. And what we're able to do is use a blog to get the word out there, but we also pull it back into print. And so every Sunday during the school year, we have a page where people can read about what is happening with youth arts, because it's so important that I think that the efforts that children are putting into, and teens, into making and creating things and being creative and putting themselves out there, that we needed a routine way of showing the Capital Region what's really happening in this wide breadth of the cultural landscape. You know, what's interesting about the arts compared to sports, with sports you have a schedule and you have a series of public events, and you have this built-in drama because you'll have a championships season as well. So you have winners and losers almost every week. With kids in the arts, so much of it, and this is arts in general, so much happens behind the scenes. You know, it's
and a non-competitive nature.
It's non-competitive.
Or at least it appears to be a non-competitive.
Well, that's true. That's true. There'll be rehearsals. There'll be kids in studios working on projects, and then there'll be a performance or an art exhibit. But so much of it is just behind the scenes, not for public consumption, and then boom, it comes, and then it disappears. And so we're just trying to grab onto that a little bit to give as full of a picture as possible.
I've not seen a statistic like this, and I don't know if it's been quantified, but as participation in cultural events has exceeded participation in professional sporting events, professional cultural events for many years. Until recently there was a decline, but it surprises people they're even close. I bet you participation by young people in cultural events exceeds their participation in
It doesn't. It doesn't. We looked into it.
Oh, you did?
We looked into it. There's something like 70% of students will have been involved in a sport, whether it's with a school or a club sport outside of school, from you know the first 12 years of schooling, so elementary through high school. It's only about 50% of kids will be involved in some sort of art that's outside of a class.
Oh, okay.
You know, so like just making something, being in a musical, being in a choir, being in an orchestra, being in a band, or just making and exhibiting things.
When I go to a Schenectady or Albany high school concert, I've been to them both, there must be 500, 600 young people involved in 8 different ensembles.
Yes.
So I walk out going, whoa, it's incredible. You know,
Yes.
it's just incredible.
Well, what's interesting, I think a lot of the same kids who are involved in sports they're not exclusive.
Right,
you know,
right.
I mean, kids involved in sports are also involved in the arts, and it's giving recognition to the fullness of these students' lives. You know, because the sports coverage, I think, is necessary and good, but it's what we're reporting on are the efforts, you know, that the kids are putting into it. Very few of them are going to, you know, get a collegiate scholarship or go pro or something like that. And it might be true with the arts as well. Who knows who's going to get a collegiate scholarship in the arts or become a professional artist? Some will, some won't. But what we need to honor and recognize in a thorough and routine way is the effort, you know, because there's a lot happening here. There's a lot in the, you know, in the body and mind of the people as they're growing up that we need to recognize and show. And I think that's what we do with the blog for youth arts and in that print section in the Sunday paper.
So you entered this world from criticism?
The
journalism arts world?
The journalism arts world, well, I entered journalism as a journalism student, and I worked in news, but I had written book criticism. And I think it was about 6 or 7 years ago, one of the early blogs that we had at Times Union was a books blog. And so I have a MFA in creative writing, and so I have an interest in contemporary literature. And so I was writing book criticism. And what's interesting is that thinking about other kinds of criticism, music criticism or theater criticism, it's the same sort of muscles of thinking about what is this piece of work trying to do, what does it accomplish or what does it realize, and how much importance does it have in the greater world. You know, I think those are the main questions for a critic in any realm of endeavor would face.
So do you think that's changed? Has it changed from your perception in the years of your doing it, from book criticism to assigning critics? Largely, you don't write much of the criticism to you, but
the overarching world of criticism is vastly different than it was even 5, 6, 7 years ago, and the thing is that what people look toward or look for are criticism is creeped into everything, and everybody is a critic. But that's nothing new. I think everyone said that about show business and stuff. But if you go on Amazon, for example, they'll have professional critics about a book, but then you'll see readers' criticism about a book, and it's so much. For movies, there's those like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic that sort of compile and give a percentage of the overall number of critics who rated something positively or negatively, which is
I love how you can look
very
at the
questionable.
Positive ones or the negative ones. You could choose. Which one is that in that you can just, Apple does it. You can look at just their good criticisms or just their lousy criticisms.
And so it seems like that critical eye, those same questions about what is this thing trying to do, how does it realize it, and what's its importance in the greater world, is true for, electronic goods, consumer products, a vacuum cleaner or a hair dryer, those are the main critical questions that I think people are trying to answer in a wealth of things. And to see it online, to see it in I think gives people credence to what they're doing. And so book criticism in particular has gone through vast changes where there used to be lots of newspapers like the Washington Post or the Los Angeles Times that had dedicated standalone book sections that have since disappeared. Even at the Times Union, we used to have a section that was called, I don't even remember what it was called, Books and Travel, which was a strange combination, but a lot of our Sunday feature sections have been combined into one called Unwind. And it's just we don't have as much space in print, but in the online world, there seems to be a lot of book criticism, and a lot of it's happening on Amazon.
So does it change how you make, it must change. How does it change? The decisions you make about what?
Yeah, well, so let's think about, you know, when I said I was reviewing books and stuff, and it would be based really on what I thought was interesting. In newspapers in general, people try to be objective, you know, and you want to have an objective presentation of the facts, but the overriding bias is, well, what do we choose to show in the first place? And so I had that you know, that critical decision to say, well, I'm going to write about this book, like Zadie Smith's White Teeth. I remember writing about that. She wasn't really well known yet, and I thought this is an important book, so I'm going to write about it. She's from London, you know, she's not local, and so if we think about what our book coverage now is more based on interviews with local authors or people who are visiting, that the public can experience in a public setting, and so that's one change toward more local.
Do you find it hard to continue to have the distinction of professional criticism versus these blogger criticisms? You know, it strikes me there's a big difference, but I
think there is a huge difference. Yeah, I think I haven't. Maybe this will finally answer your question. That there is a huge difference. There is what we see online are just reactions that aren't connected. You know, for somebody who didn't experience the same thing. A lot of people will just write something like this was good, but without saying, well what's the this exactly? You know, or they might be fans, and so they won't measure their commentary, or they'll be so deeply into the band, it might be sort of like Fish's version of song X wasn't as good as it was when I saw them, you know, 3 months ago, because I've been following them around, and you know, which, I mean, there's value in that, but for a general readership, there isn't. And so the things that I think make good criticism are one of those 3 basic questions about what something's trying to do and how well it does it and how important it is, but also is the critic's depth of experience within a certain genre. And by that, I just mean having seen lots of different things and not necessarily being a fan of any one thing in order to have an objective point of view coming into it, which I think a lot of people think, wow, you just have an objective point of view for a critic, because people think a critic is just an opinion. But I think the best criticism are ones that are that sort of recapture a subjective experience as objectively as possible. And that's difficult to do, because what that means is, as you're doing something or as you are experiencing something, you're evaluating it. It's sort of like living in 2 time frames at the same time, you know, like, or if you're watching a movie and having 2 different soundtracks going at the same time. It's, I'm experiencing this and I'm aware of my experience at the same time. And this is what I'll end up writing about.
Do you see professional criticism challenged 10 years from now? Do you think it'll still exist?
Yes, it will still exist. It's always under challenge. I mean, it's when, if you look at the newspaper landscape, for example, so many of the early layoffs and buyouts were critics, staff critics. A lot of criticism has gone to freelancers, and I think we're lucky in this region that we have, or I have, a stable, that sounds kind of animal-like. There's a group, a stable. Yeah, there just a depth of talent, and what's interesting is just how much happens around here. I mean, to me that's the biggest challenge, that the access to creating new works, either digitally is just so much greater than it ever was before, is that so many more people are involved in creating art. I mean, it seems like so many more people are also involved in getting together with community theater, for example, and or creating music. You know, anybody with a digital setup could throw together 10 tracks, you know.
So I wanted to ask that. So you're taking another step. So over
Okay.
the time of you watching the Capital Region,
Yes.
probably with the most informed, holistic capacity, information of anybody, is it that different? Is it that much more? Is there? How do you look at it from over 10 years?
Are you talking about going backwards in time? Like
Yeah,
how
going
has it
backwards
changed?
to now.
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. There is so much more. So not only is it, you know, a lot of it has to do with digital capabilities, but there's also bricks and mortars things happening all over the place. So, the Palace Theater in Albany, for example, with their new executive director coming in with a clear vision and just bringing in more acts, just raises the bar a little bit more. The Irish American Heritage Museum, which used to be a summer-only venue, right, in Greene County, is now in downtown Albany, and it's open year-round. So that just adds more stuff. We have there's a small art gallery in Troy that was started by a lot of them are MFA graduates from the University of Albany, called Colorworks, which is presenting some like high quality fine art and with a clear mission, and I hope they last. But it's amazing that, you know, it's not a brain drain. There are people starting small coffee shops where bands can play in. I'm thinking of like the Hudson River Coffee House in Albany, for example. Steamer number 10 has increased its offerings with more music. There's new theater companies. I think I mentioned, you know, there's some like Our Own Productions is, I think they're kicking it up a notch. The Schenectady Light Opera Company has their new building and they're expanding, and their productions are top notch. It's some of the best community theater around. There's, you know, I could go on and on. There's just so much more, and this is all within the last 5 years. MPAC opened in, they just finished their third or fourth season, and they're bringing in some high quality stuff as well. There's a lot going on. You know, my head's about to explode when I think about everything that's happening, and I have completely forgotten your question because I think that was only part of it. There have been a lot of changes. There is just more stuff on multiple levels, and it's a really exciting time to be in my position to see all of this coming and happening. You know, there's right now there's a young filmmaker who's doing a Kickstarter campaign, and Kickstarter is, you know, a fundraising mechanism that's online, and so there's this new film stuff going on. Were you involved in the University of Albany had Yep. a discussion recently about promoting the Capital Region as a center for film, and here's this one young man who's exactly doing that. And I think Kickstarter was mentioned at that that event, and he's doing it. You know, he's making that discussion. He's realizing that discussion. You know, so he's risking himself, and he's putting himself out there, and that's exciting. That there's all these people doing things. You know, and just we want to recognize as much as we can, and it's difficult. I think when I took the job about 4 years ago, I was told by my predecessor that the most difficult thing is that you're going to have to say no a lot, and that is hard, and that's why I was talking about there's a lot of learning involved of what's happening in different places, and just learning to tell people like, hey, let me know what's happening. You know, there's often this sense like, why didn't you cover our thing? You know, and it's like, well, did you tell anybody about it? You know, it's you know, pick up the phone. My phone number is 454-5629. You know, I answer it unless I'm like in a meeting or something, and it's a way of just getting information where it needs to be.
You do a great job, Michael. Thank you very much for joining us. Huldah's about to shoot us because we've gone way beyond our limit, so we'll see what happens when it gets to editing time, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Philip Morris with Michael Janairo from the Times-Union, the Arts and Entertainment editor. Thank you for joining Impact. Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.